Okay, our topic, and Aaron, I'm going to use some overhead slides, and by the way, I'm choosing to do that this time for this module because it organizes the information quite nicely. The slides that I use in here, and I will not use slides every day because I think it gets darn boring, but this stuff is pretty much lockstep in terms of the organization. These slides are available to you within the course content. Just look down the list on the left side a little ways, about halfway, and you find them. If you want to have them available to follow in class, you can. But this is a set of topics that are the basis for everything that comes from this point on. And it's also quite likely that you have seen some of this in a basic psychology class. If you have Psychology 101, they should at least introduce you to some aspects of perception and attitude. Sometimes personality is held over for a more advanced course. The content of Chapter 5 is something that none of us can escape. We're trapped by it, in a sense. And hopefully in our discussion and with the examples that I'm going to use, including examples from you folks personally, that we're able to open this up into a healthy arena so that we can see how our perceptual processes work and how it affects our behavior, what types of attitudes we hold, and what are the objects and targets, as we say, of those attitudes. And then perhaps we can go a little bit inside ourselves and take a look at our personalities. I'm not going to subject you to some heavy-duty, clinically based psychology personality instruments. You can do that privately if you wish. And it's possible you've taken a personality test here and there. Sometimes employers use them if they can validate that they have anything to do with job performance. And sometimes you can just do them for fun. I am going to test your perceptual processes. And I'm going to reproduce the E exercise right here in the room because only about 3 people in this class did it. And it, I think, is useful to look at it. Now, the 3 topics that we have, and Aaron, you'll have enough space on these slides to open a window on me so that we can kind of break up the image a little bit. These are all related to human psychology, and they strongly affect our behavior in organizations. And they're in a sequence of perception, attitudes, personality, because part of the basis of attitudes and their formation is the perceptual process. And then the two come together to help in forming whatever personality that we happen to have. And you're going to see a variety of personality types in Chapter 5. And we'll try to bring those alive with perhaps volunteers in the room saying, well, I'm more or less like a certain personality type. Now, everything here in these slides is contained on pages 100 and 101. And every bit of it. I simply abstracted the information and built them into the slides. Now, this is a cognitive process, which means it operates internally within our mental states and within our brain functioning as a way in which we think about the events that come our way. And I'm going to share with you my deliberate experimental experience walking from the Anderson School through the mall during the change in classes, as I hit it just a little bit after 12:15, and what I perceived as I went through there. And I want to try it on you all to see what you say about it. Perception affects all senses, absolutely everything. Sight, touch, taste, smell, and hearing. And some people are extraordinarily capable in monitoring their hearing process so they block out sounds. Others have great difficulty with ambient sound and can't block it out. I'm superb at blocking out stuff that annoys me. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I'm old and I just have learned how to do that over 68 years. But if it bugs me, it depends on how high-pitched it gets. If it gets really up there, then I begin to react to it. Smell, I've traveled all over the world. I can handle almost any aroma. Now, aroma is the nice word for smell, but smelling is obviously one of our senses. Now, how about yourselves? Do you have any sensitivity personally in these areas of sight, touch, taste, smell, and hearing? Are there any annoyances that occurred, that happened to you? There's a whole bunch of cables under here. I'm trying to move them out of the way so I don't trip when I stand up. You can probably see them. It's a total jungle. It's completely unsafe, and the fire marshal is not going to like it when I call him this afternoon. No, I won't do that. All right. What of those 5 senses, what would you say about yourself? And silence is not acceptable. I'll sit here all afternoon.
I guess for me it'd be like sight, because lights, like if it's a really bright light or something, or it's kind of like a strobe light or something, it makes me really nauseous. Can't really block it out. Sounds, I can buzzing noise. I just noticed there, like I can block out all that stuff. But sight is one of the.
But lights, bright lights.
Yeah, some of those things there's no way to block it out for me. But
that's okay. Now, by the way, this does not border on psychosis. It's perfectly normal for any of us to say, bright lights bug me. And it has nothing to do with the relationship you had with your mother growing up or anything like that. And we can have, and what all this leads to, of course, when we get to personality, is enormous individual differences in what we can handle and what we can manage. Others on aspects of the senses. Stuff that bothers you. You can't be that flat. Okay, we'll come up there too.
Like the sound of someone popping their knuckles and back.
Oh yeah, I used to do that as a teenager. That was very fashionable in my day.
You too.
Pardon?
It freaks me out completely.
And what do you do?
Doing them right after.
She's being wonderfully honest. Go ahead. Yes, Los Alamos, go ahead.
To me, it's when in smelling related, like that cigarette smoke. I can ignore it for a little bit, but then after a while, it really bothers me.
Very good. Okay, others, come on.
Sometimes when there's an analog clock in the room, and it just all of a sudden you can hear the ticking really, really loud, and it just bugs me. My mom's watch is that way. I like hear it all of a sudden. It's like, oh
Thank you.
my goodness.
Thank you for your honesty. No, others, come on. What really bugs you? And it's all perception, and you can't block it out. Am I correct on the sound of the clock? You cannot block it out. It's there, and you hear it. You could be reading a book, and you hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
When
ma'am.
somebody has the TV on in the other room when I'm trying to study, I can't block that out.
Okay. Now, what's the solution? Other than
Turn it down.
you could turn it down, you could remove the television from the property completely. You also could wear earplugs. Now, your roommate, possibly should have some courtesy about dealing with your situation and what disturbs you. All right. Now, let's continue on, because I want to get to the next part to share with you my experience in the exciting trek from the Anderson School to Woodward Hall about 20 minutes ago. That must be the classroom next door. It's quite noisy. Now, the perceptual process includes all the inputs that come to a person and the choice of those inputs by the person. So the examples that you gave, where you can't block out the ticking of the clock, just as an example, it's a choice. It's there, and you cannot get rid of it, short of covering your ears and that sort of thing. The stimulus sources are a whole bunch of items. I happen to have listed 5. I should probably put an ellipses at the end of it, because the list goes on. And it's people, events, physical objects, and ideas. And you're going to get ideas from the textbook, from the book of readings, from going to the website, from talking to friends and relatives and fellow students and so on, and you react to it. I try to take I perceive myself, notice how I said that, I perceive myself as taking a fairly neutral position with respect to the content of the course. I'm not going to suggest that one idea is necessarily better than another. I perceive them as having utility to us in understanding our behavior and the behavior of others around us. Now, all of this comes together to help us adapt to a changing environment. And there's a couple of specific elements of perception that can help us in our adaptation if we understand what we do with the information that we get. Now, here's a breakdown of the perceptual process. In this formal terms here, each of these is a bolded term in the text. They're not bolded on the slides, but there's a target. And I'm looking at the body of people in the room, and each of you, the whole body, and my perception or sight is about within the angled rows of seats. I can see clearly everybody in this particular angle of view. And there are differences among you. And some of those differences catch my eye, such as the color of a person's hair or the length of their hair, or the fact that they're wearing a hat. And there's nothing wrong with wearing a cap. I just happen to key on it because that's something, and I know you're wearing one right there, and this gentleman on the upper row is wearing one. This is just something I happen to notice. Now, why would I ever notice it? I was taught that you don't wear hats inside. You just don't. That's not true anymore because it's extremely common for both men and women to wear caps and hats and all sorts of things inside. Threshold. The minimum information from the target that lets you notice it. Now, apparently sounds for several of you, and cracking of knuckles, that's the first one. I haven't had anybody give me that one. But sounds for 2 and cracking of knuckles for 1 catch your attention fairly quickly. It doesn't take much for you to attend to it. So that means the threshold is low. In other cases, try it around the room. You may have a high threshold before you notice. I happen to notice smells really fast, and I'm not sure why. I checked with my shrink the other day. He said I'm okay. It just happens that I notice aromas because I travel so much in different parts of the country and around the world that I experience the different aromas. When you went to Peru, sir, did you notice a difference in the aromas or the odors?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, of course. And it's unavoidable. What are you thinking of?
I think that they're smelly.
I can't hear you.
I think the aromas are smelly. Because they, I don't know, they like don't bathe kind of like that. I have no idea.
Okay, all right. Now, 2 thresholds are operating on us. One is the detection threshold, which is you notice that something has changed in your environment. And the next one is the recognition threshold, where the point at which you can identify the target of change. I think I've shared with you about this, a comment about this new breed of dog that we have in our kennel, the Tibetan Mastiff. And it's a pretty big dog. He weighs about 100 pounds. And he's totally silent. He's got cat feet, he weighs 100 pounds, and he can run in the yard and you cannot hear him. And then he's there. And it's like feeling a massive presence. Suddenly, I can feel the environment change. And it's a good idea I detect that, because if he hits me, if he runs, he does like to kind of run into you, you can kind of get hurt. So I'm conditioning myself to detect and recognize the presence of jimuta, as we call them. Now, textbook figure 5.1 lays this out, and I refer to it, I'm not going to show it to you, I refer to it as a point of reference. Now take a look, and you have access to all of this. I wouldn't take extensive notes, and it's all in the pages that I described. The target can emerge from the surrounding context either quickly or slowly, and it depends in part on the contrast between the target and the background. And obviously, maybe you learned this as young people, that if you are out at night in the dark, that you should wear brightly colored clothing. Even reflective clothing is a good idea if you're walking around